Good morning, everyone. Here we are. It almost looks as if we're at Solist, Solist Socialist Architecture Evergreen. I had a friend who had a teacher in college once in Slavic studies or something, and he said, "That is what I hate about the communists the most, the architecture." Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Maybe I shouldn't blame everything upon them. But we are now going to maybe just discuss a little bit, because last night I felt like, oh my God, I'm just throwing out all these Google headlines at people. But it was almost like a kind of go along with just typing in keywords kind of things from conversations I had had over the years with people, mainly Doc, but other people who Doc introduced me to and who were from that era at Evergreen. And Doc was the person who first told me about hey, this is way cool. Who first told me, there we go, about Ted Bundy being on campus all the time there and being a spy, and that just everybody knew it, and he was like really obvious. He didn't fit in to the whole kind of, he was not like good undercover, shall we say. So he really stuck out. And and there are janitors. Janitors are incredible people for information. And there was one, I'm sure he's retired by now, but he used to overhear everything, because they just sort of act like janitors. I don't know, they think janitors are just deaf, or, I don't know what they think. But anyway, the theyness, I'm not sure. That's just kind of not interesting, but we are continuing up into our little secret walk here. And yeah, it's cold, making us have on a coat. So so the custodial people knew, they heard the secret meetings, and he just wanted the dirt on everyone. What is everyone up to? Blah, 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 blah. And this was during the Dan Evans years, although I was there for the Olander years, which were wild as well. And I think I told you that there was a whole kind of a spy network that was in place there, according to Tim O'Malley, who even drove his car. Not his, he liked to borrow other people's. He was too smart to have one. And it was like a beat up, crazy sort of like 70s muscle car. It did not look like it would be part of security. And he drove on the sidewalk and drove around on the sidewalks all over the campus and never was stopped. And I was in the car, he had said, "Here, I'll drive you to class." He came to my house in the morning, and I said, "No, I'll walk." He's like, "No." And he drove on the, they're wide sidewalks, but it's still like weird. And he said, "I did that to prove that they won't stop me. No one will stop me." And they really like to stop people for anything there, because that's kind of how they make their money. They would boot cars there. They wouldn't just give them tickets. They would literally boot people's cars. I remember people coming from other states and saying, like, this state is crazy. Like, we don't do that in our state, right? How do they allow it? So this is, and then a lot of other information I found out really before Doc even was in New York. It's funny how sometimes you have to go far. And it was a complete, once again, accident that I lived above Stanley Aronowitz, who I just recently saw had passed away, and I did a video about him a little bit years ago, but I think videos get buried a lot. And Stanley actually was like kind of, he was like a celebrity in his own right. He wrote a book about the Hormel labor practices in Minnesota or something. I don't know if people weren't given enough break time and had to wear diapers while slaughtering. I don't know what the whole deal was, but he won a Pulitzer for it, so that was kind of a cool thing. I mean, like, super cool. And he lived below me in this fun sort of, honey, your coat just came off. He lived in this really fun brownstone, and we were in the top floor, and he was right under us, and he had a new baby, and he looked like Buddy Hackett. He had this kind of cheerful, adorable, kind of sweet face, and he always was carrying giant amounts of diapers. And my boyfriend at the time always said, he's the best father in the world. He always is carrying diapers in the wind, right? And looks like he's going to launch from them. And so we went down one day, and he was like, I want to know my neighbors. And Jeff was going to Columbia. I was weirdly going to Evergreen through the mail at that point. I was just doing work for a professor and, working at good old Sullivan and Cromwell. So that's what was happening. And, so we told Stanley that, Stanley had taught at Columbia, but then he had gotten booted. There had been some sort of coup that had happened, and he was like relegated to City College or something. So that was kind of an interesting thing at that point. But he freaked out when he said, where do you go to school, and he probably thought I just say one of the many places around town. And I said, Evergreen. And he said, no, not Evergreen. No, wait. I'm sorry. There was a prelude to that. At first, I said where I worked before I said where I went to school. I said, he said, where do you work or whatever? What do you guys do, right? And I just said, I work as a, corporate legal proofreader or whatever. And he said, oh, wow, where? And I said, the firm's called Sullivan and Cromwell. And his eyes got literally big as mill wheels kind of thing. He completely freaked out on me. And this was before I really knew the whole, what was up with Sullivan and Cromwell. I was pretty new to it. I'd been there maybe 4 months. And he's like, what are you doing there? They were the law firm for the Nazis, right? And, Stanley's just looking at me aghast, right? How on earth are you at that place, of all places? It just really shocked him. He probably thought I was going to say, I don't know what he thought I was going to say. Sorry about my thumb. I have the camera upside down. I'm really sorry. So it's like, okay, Stanley. So I say, I'm in school too, right? And then Stanley says, well, what school? Where are you in school? And then I say, it's out west, right? It's Evergreen State College. I'm just sort of doing through the mail. And then his eyes got even bigger than from Sullivan and Cromwell. And he said, that place, oh my God, And he really put the fear of God in me, when he did that. Although, I'd experienced it. I had fled from it. But I didn't have enough, outside, knowing about what was going on. And it's weird when you know something, but you can't name it, or you just sort of feel it, right? It's like you're in the dark, shot in the dark. And he just freaked out. And then he said, you know what? Stay at Sullivan and Cromwell. I take back everything I said. He said, I wouldn't if you were going to any other school or doing anything else on the planet. But if you went to Evergreen, you will be safe. You will be in the eye of the needle, And that is true. That is one thing that I did like working there. And thinking about it now was I went from Evergreen to the Sullivan with like a couple of interludes. I had a little gig in San Francisco for a minute, and in Connecticut too for like just a little bit. But they might be the MK Ultra people. They might be doing all of this, right? And if you get the greatest hits Z book, we'll talk about how the OSS was started there first, kind of as a prelude to the CIA. But they might be doing all these things, but they sure don't want they're not going to be driving their own proofreaders crazy, right? They need someone sane to do the documents. So, that was basically what he was getting at. You're in a place that is an agent of chaos, but you're in the middle of it. You're in the protected zone, and you need to be there after what you went through at Evergreen. And I never told him what I went through. All I said was I went to Evergreen. But he knew that if anyone had set foot in that place, that's supposedly a hippie haven, and it's designed off of it's the same design as an Arizona prison. So, when I do get comments from people saying that place looks hopeless, and it looked better in the past, I'm not having limerence about it because I never was charmed by it, but it's weird how it even went downhill from what it even originally was. And that is saying something, isn't it? That is really saying something. Now, the book, Experiment at Evergreen, I started flipping through. Hey there. That's too fun. I saw a guy on a chariot the other day. He had the biggest dog I'd ever seen, and he had it like on a harness, and he had this homemade chariot, and it was just like, wow, that's amazing. So here we are. Sorry again. Yikes. So the book is like really cynical. It's, and I remember when I read it before that I thought it was like a huge, like between the lines books. And it's weird. It's super cynical, It starts off in the beginning, and this used to happen to us with documents. That there was a law firm I used to work at where the documents would start off really innocuous. I remember one started off where it was like about a French fabric company, and it's like, okay, and it was this giant document, and more pages would come through, and more pages would come through, and more pages would come through. And we're like, okay, wow, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden, after just, hundreds, like endless pages, we're suddenly reading about a different country. Yikes, I am so sorry. He yanks me. We're suddenly reading about a different country, and we're reading about biotech and just really bizarre, biotech stuff. And underground, like super like bunker underground labs in this other country. This was in between 85 and 87, okay? So, oh God, shoot. Did I lose my train of thought? Uh-oh. I'm talking about the bunkers. I'm talking about the blah, blah. Yikes. It somehow relates. I might have to watch this again to get back to the train of thought, because, yikes. I'm so sorry about that, everyone. I think I was worrying too much about my fingers, but, anyway, we've got a place that, and that was not Sullivan and Cromwell, by the way, the place that I'm talking about. But shoot, I might have to just end this one and watch it and start up again, you guys, because I don't want to do that to you. We can pick up, another train of thought, like, what was the deal with Bundy and this guy, what was going on with that. Stanley Aronowitz, was part of Columbia, and, that must be how he knew about Evergreen. And Evergreen was kind of, there, if you really trace it back, according to Stanley, it doesn't just go to that, the Micklejohn guy who the book starts off with. So the book, that's what I was talking about, hypnosis. We would be hypnotized by these documents that would go on forever about, a textile factory in some little romantic country, and then it would end up really being a kind of a front for something else, and that is kind of what I was getting at there. Oops, darn. Yeah, the whole thing about a front. So Stanley somehow knew that something was up with Evergreen, and the experiment at Evergreen kind of starts out that way. It's not a super big book, and a lot of it is just letters kind of at the end of it. Letters from other professors kind of writing to him and, talking about what they think Evergreen is. And I was shocked he published them. He probably just knew none of the students are going to read this. It doesn't matter, because I was just thumbing through it. I was not doing a cover to cover on it. I was thumbing through it as I was uploading the vid last night. And it starts off, if you start reading it, it starts off with a guy who sounds kind of Unitarian, named Mickelhoff or something, some kind of flowery name. And I think he's, out of California, in the early mid-60s or something. And, he wants, there's a quote from him that says he doesn't want to reform education. He wants to completely, rebuild it, from the ground up. And, so it's this kind of romantic, almost sort of Esalen feeling, utopian, that kind of early mid-60s kind of vibe before it all started to really fall apart. And so, the book really starts off with that. And so you think that's how the book's going to continue. It's just going to be about, there's a new way and a new dawn and, a new paradigm and blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly the gears shift, and I remember that happening. It was very interesting thumbing through it and not going through the hypnosis of, say, the first, oh my God, it could even be the first 7,500 pages are pure hypnosis. It's kind of like when I first started proofreading, I remember Franny. Franny was the one who looked out the window and tapped her cigarettes. This is back in the day. You could smoke in the office, right? And she'd look out the window, and this would be on Wall Street, and she'd point to places like Lehman Brothers, all the, and she'd say, it's a house of cards, but she said once, one of the top, lawyers that kind of told her that really in all legal documents, there's about only 2 paragraphs of actual content, and the rest is covering your ass. The whole rest of it is covering your ass and setting it up and kind of going through a hypnosis. And then you've got, it's like with scripts or screenplays, you can boil it all down into a sentence, right? People sell composite sentences to Hollywood all the time, right? Rags to riches, blah, blah, right? Framed for murder, pinned, and there you've got it. You've got the whole thing. And then the script is just fleshing it out, right? So that is what this experimented Evergreen book, I realized that just so clearly last night, because if you start reading it, you think it's about this, that people are, they're leaving the Stone Age of education and going into a higher consciousness, of education. No, that's the cell at the beginning, that is the great cell. And then I'm shocked that he even put the other part in. But I think he couldn't help himself. I think there's some Duper's Delight going on where he's, just saying, yeah, right. And it might be, that he's writing back to his friends. Because one page that I just opened to, and I stuck a piece of Kleenex in it. I balled up a piece of Kleenex to just stick in that page to not lose it. I cannot mark these pages. I got to go get Post-its or something. Where he said, we say that this is a student-based college and, that this is all, that the students, are part of it all. But he said, really, that's just what we say. But in reality, we just do the same thing that everybody does, And so it's like, okay, great. Megan, your coat's coming off. So I gotta fix his coat. This is bad. Maybe he doesn't want it on. Do you want your coat off? So that is really, 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 really weird that we've got a lot of questions here, everybody. And let me know what you have to say about any of this. I guess I find it so strange, and I did kind of say it in the last one, that this guy who just is so, straight-laced, is just pushing this madness, and I didn't really go in enough about the kind of psilocybin part, because when I first went there, that was really, that was a big deal. I don't know if it still is, and oddly, there were predictions that he made about where the college would be that I am seeing now. Not so much about the bad funding, but just about, and that makes me wonder, is that why the book's out of print? Because it used to just be in the bookstore, lining the front of it, experimented Evergreen, here's this book about Evergreen, it looked really good, but I don't know, there might be something in there or two that someone saw. I mean, this is the only copy that they have with the entire library system here, and it's a book, that was the big book about their college. So go figure that one, right? Seriously, what's the deal with that? I'm wondering if they found, I won't say libelous, but maybe things that didn't age well, or maybe things that no one had read because no one was reading that book except maybe his buddies who were on the Inside Joke, and he, the regular person that reads it, they'll get lulled, and then after 50 or 100 pages, they'll say, oh, I know what this is going to say, right? That it's predictable or whatever. I know what this is all about. I've got this one. I've got it down. And then they stop reading it because they feel like they knew what the whole thing was. John. So this is a kind of an interesting day of just uncovering things. I thank you again for asking me to go down this rabbit hole, and it did seem good to start with Dan Evans because he's the little original bass line, bass nut, whatever. And so we've got him to start with. And then it's weird that when you look him up, when I looked him up on Wikipedia, it said his relationship with Bundy before it even said he was governor. You know, and that was like, wow, okay, that's nice. Interesting, very interesting that you're going to talk about that, right? So, you know, we're looking into the origins of Evergreen. Our first name is Dan Evans, and then, sorry about that again, and then our second name that comes up is, you've got it, Ted Bundy. Okay, so that, I'm sorry, that's just too weird. So shall we, you know, we've got questions. I don't know where the answers may lie, but I do find it interesting that Stanley Aronowitz gave a big piece of the puzzle, and Columbia, again, is the college that sponsored, you know what and you know who, the New School for Social Research. Now, it has been pointed out to me as well that Evergreen is not far from Fort Lewis. So maybe everything is close to a fort. I don't know. But anyway, we wish you the best and happy aftermath.